Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's legendary partner. He achieved what he called prodigious results, just incredible success. But here's the crazy part. He always said it had nothing to do with being a genius. So if it wasn't genius, what was his secret? Well, according to him, it was just a simple bag of tricks.
And he was dead serious about this. Munger was adamant that his success didn't come from some superior intellect he was born with. Nope. He credited it to just a handful of simple but really powerful mental models that he used over and over again.
Right? That's the billion-dollar question. If it's not some kind of raw genius, what in the world is in this bag of tricks that let him see things so clearly and make such brilliant decisions? Well, let's unpack 3 of his absolute most powerful ones.
So let's get right into it. What was Munger's secret? It definitely wasn't about being born smarter than everybody else in the room. It was about having a better system for thinking. Because a better system, a better process, will beat raw intelligence pretty much every single time. It's really about having a framework to avoid doing dumb things rather than trying to force some moment of brilliance. And the first trick in his bag? Well, it might just be the most important one of all.
All right, Munger's first trick is an idea that sounds so simple, but has these huge, profound implications. It's called inversion, and he used this mental model constantly, from his early days in the military all the way through his legendary investing career.
It almost sounds too simple to be effective, but trust me, it works. See, while most of us are laser-focused on how do I succeed, Munger would start by listing all the ways he could possibly fail. And then he would just fanatically avoid those things. It's not about finding the perfect path forward. It's about clearing all the stupid obstacles out of your way first. And just look at how he used this in a situation where lives were literally on the line. As a young weather forecaster in the Army, his one job was to keep pilots safe. So instead of asking, how do I make a perfect forecast, he flipped it. He inverted the question, how could I kill these pilots? And the answer was immediately obvious. Get them into icing conditions or let them run out of fuel. So his entire job boiled down to one rule: fanatically avoid those 2 things at all costs.
This really drives home the real-world power of inversion in the most brutal way. Munger was convinced the helicopter crash that killed Kobe Bryant was a totally preventable tragedy. The most obvious risk was the bad weather. A simple inversion, just asking, what is the worst thing that could happen here, would have made the danger impossible to ignore.
Okay, so Munger's next trick is all about seeing beyond the surface level. It's about cutting through what looks like expertise to see a problem not just in 2 dimensions, but in 3. Munger used to tell his great story from his days as a young lawyer. He had a client who was negotiating with the Edison Company over a piece of his hilly ranch land. So the client goes out and hires the most respected real estate appraiser in the whole county, who comes back with this valuation that just felt way too low. And here's why. The appraiser was totally stuck in 2 dimensions. He just did the standard thing, calculated the acreage, multiplied it by the going rate from similar sales. But Munger immediately saw the 3rd dimension. He realized the power lines would freeze the grade of the land. You wouldn't be able to level out the hills for future development, which was where the land's real value was. The appraiser saw a $125,000 problem. Munger saw a $600,000 problem. And in classic Munger style, he did not hold back. He saw that this so-called expert was just following a formula and was completely missing the fundamental reality of the situation. So he told his client to fire the guy, and he got him a much, much better deal, all by just going back to first principles. All right, so just like Munger cut through flawed expertise, his 3rd trick cuts through another common problem, what we call analysis paralysis. It's the skill of knowing when you have just enough information to act, and act with conviction. Munger told this story about a massive deal he and Buffett did to invest in Anadarko Petroleum. Now, most firms would send in armies of lawyers for months of due diligence. Munger and Buffett, they made the decision in a couple of days, over the phone. How? They just focused on the handful of things that truly mattered. They didn't need to know every little detail. They just needed to know the few big things that made the deal a total no-brainer. They knew it was in America's best oil field, the deal structure was great, management was top-notch, and the return was excellent. That was it. That was enough. And this is just a classic Munger zinger. He believes that this endless due diligence we see is often just a substitute for actual clear thinking. It's a way for people to feel secure, not a real search for the truth. Strong thinkers, on the other hand, they identify the few variables that drive 90% of the outcome, and then they have the courage to act. So let's kind of bring this all together. Munger's whole approach wasn't about being a genius. It was about consistently applying a few of these powerful mental models to avoid the most common errors in judgment.
And that, right there, is the ultimate lesson. Inverting the problem, thinking in 3D, knowing when enough is enough, these aren't secrets reserved for billionaires. They're tools anyone can learn. The real power isn't in just knowing the trick, it's in actually using it, day in and day out. So that kind of leaves a question for you to think about. As you go through your day, making decisions at work, at home, what mental models are you relying on? Because just thinking about your own system, your own bag of tricks, that's the first step to making it a whole lot better.